Celtics look like they're on their path to doing it. 102-88 win over the Heat in Game 4. Boston now leads that series 3-1. Kind of the same story as it was in Game 1 and Game 3. Basically, if the Heat don't set a franchise record for three-point makes, they're probably not going to be able to hang in this series. What stood out to you, if anything, from Game 4 of Celtics-Heat?
Well, I think the most consequential thing that happened was the Porzingis injury. That can actually have an effect on everything championship-wise going forward, depending on what his prognostication is and how long he might actually end up being out. Is it a week? He said, feels good on Twitter, but who knows? Giannis Antetokounmpo's already
added the flexing muscle emoji. So we know that it's he's really punctuated about being like, I am actually still strong, so don't worry about it.
Do you think in that situation you should go with the leg emoji? I mean, we know your arms are good, man.
I think it's more about like what better kind of connotes muscle strength. And if you just have a leg, like although Porzingis' legs don't look particularly strong anyway. So, but yeah, I think you're right. You're sending mixed messages here about what part of you is strong.
Yeah, but nonetheless, he's feeling strong, and it seems like the Celtics will at least have a little bit of a rest before they end up starting their next series, whether it be the Cavs or the Magic. I actually think they could probably win either of those series without Porzingis, but that was the big thing to me, obviously. A guy who they brought in literally to be like their cheat code, their switch beater, they can just throw it to in the post. Horford will be able to stretch the court the way that Porzingis does, but the switch beating isn't necessarily his strength this far into his career. As for actual Game 4, you nailed it. If the Heat aren't hitting a franchise record in threes, they're going to have a tough time winning in this series. They hit 23 in the Game 2 win. I think they've made 30 combined in the other 3 games that the Celtics have won. So the Celtics have done a much better job of challenging their three-point shooters. You also aren't getting crazy shooting nights from Haywood Highsmith, Nikola Jovic, Jaime Jaquez, guys who aren't necessarily known as knockdown guys. When they're not hitting, it's just going to be tough for Miami to generate enough points to keep pace with a Boston team that can score really easily. Like Derrick White, you don't consider him a go-to guy for the Celtics. He's their role player, their glue guy who makes everything work. You probably think of him more so even on the defensive end, where he's one of the best shot blocking guards in the league. But man, 38 points, walking into three-pointers, no problem in the first half. He had 2 dunks in the second half of this game, and he was laughing after him. Even he was surprised that Derrick White was throwing down like that. That was a great game from him, and you can see how important he's been to the Celtics, because when they just needed somebody to step up, needed somebody to take over, let's go to our 4th option, and he killed it.
The Heat made 9 3-pointers in Game 4. Derrick White made 8. Like it was
crazy.
It's absolutely crazy. And I think, the only lingering intrigue there is, I guess, where do you fall on in the sort of pocket dimension of after the whistle blows? Where do you fall on stepping into somebody's landing space?
I don't know. That was weird. I didn't know you could get a flagrant foul after the whistle. Has been already blown.
Game off, right? Are we still, how can we be flagrant when the game is not actually occurring?
Exactly. It feels like game off to me. But I guess the safer thing to do is just go KG mode and block it at the rim as it's coming down. That way you're probably not landing underneath somebody. Yeah,
Bam Adebayo trying to make sure that Jason Tatum couldn't get a shot off after the buzzer, after the whistle was blown. Steps in his landing spot. Jason Tatum as he lands, rolls his left ankle a little bit. It leads to 3 minutes of impassioned commentary from Stan Van Gundy about the legalities and the responsibilities and morality of putting up the shot after the buzzer, and how I guess Bam Adebayo should be allowed to play whatever defense he wants and when the game is actually not currently going. It's a very odd set of circumstances in a game that really didn't have much intrigue after the first few minutes. Besides that, so I guess we'll have to keep an eye on for how Boston responds in after whistle fracas possibilities in Game 5. But I think
they already had their own run-in earlier in the season when Joe Mazzulla was challenging shots from the sideline. They said, Joe, don't do that. It's ridiculous. And apparently they were right that I guess it could be a safety hazard. But yeah, Stan, I feel like, was just feeling himself. He's like, we got a blowout going on here. There's a 5-minute break in play. I'm just going to cook up some crazy takes, because he was basically saying, if you shoot the ball after the whistle's been blown, you might get fouled. You might get injured. That's just how it is. Deal with it.
It's purge rules. And I think really you've got to protect yourself at all times. I mean, I think the thing we got to keep an eye out for is if Tatum goes up to Joe Mazzulla and says, I need you to come with me. We're going to go hurt somebody and you can't ask any questions about it. Does Joe Mazzulla just say, whose car are we taking? That's really what we need to see. He's about that town life and we got to see him actually live his raps. As you mentioned, just one quick note and then we'll get out of this one. The Celtics should be pretty well positioned to handle a short absence for Kristaps Porzingis, if that's what it winds up being. They went 21-4 without Porzingis during the regular season. They outscored teams by nearly 11 points per 100 possessions with him off the floor. That's what Al Horford is there for. That's why they traded for Xavier Tillman at the sort of a little bit of insurance at the trade deadline. Obviously, neither one of those guys checks every box that Porzingis does, but it does give them some depth there. It's not ideal to be without Porzingis for any period of time, but if they need to bide some time for a round, when you're looking at a Cavs team that or a Magic team, both of them have really struggled to score. And, the Celtics are still one of the best defensive teams in the NBA. You feel pretty good about their chances of surviving that and moving forward.